Semper Fi.
Well, good morning, everybody. We're going to get started in just a little bit. If you didn't recognize all of that music, you probably recognize the first one, the Marine Corps hymn. After that was Anchors Away, and then Semper Fidelis, which means always faithful. And I played all of that Marine Corps naval type music to start us out because this machine you're looking at right here spent a good amount of its younger years sewing on patches and nameplates on United States Marine Corps uniforms. Mary, the owner of this out of Tennessee, has a son that served in the United States Marine Corps, retired from the United States Marine Corps. And when he was in the younger ranks, along with a lot of his buddies, she realized they don't have a lot of money, and it would save them, some good cash if she could help them out so they didn't have to pay a seamstress to sew on their nameplates and that on their uniforms. So she did it. And that's what this machine did a good amount of its time in the younger time of its life. But let me see if I can find Mary's note, and I'll read it to you verbatim. And I've been communicating a lot with Mary's husband, James, because I have his number. I don't have her number. So she writes, let me scroll up here. Hi, this is Mary. I bought that machine in either 1993 or 1994 at a store called Farm and Fleet. Well, any of us from the North, me being from Wisconsin, Susie being from Minnesota, we know what Farm and Fleet is. It's a great store. I bought some guns there. I bought some needles there for servicing sewing machines like this one that they use on livestock. And I bought all kinds of other things at Farm and Fleet growing up in the Midwest. And I'm sure a number of you others have heard of Farm and Fleet or Fleet Farm. So I know exactly where Mary got this machine back in 1993 or 1994. Mary writes on that she was a cheer coach for a local high school and used the machine for cheer uniform repairs and made pom-poms, backpacks for the girls, etc. After that, Mary helped sew on nameplates on the uniform for about 100 U.S. Marines. Her son retired after 21 years in the Marine Corp. Hoorah! I got to do that. That's what a Marine does. Hoorah! Retired after 21 years in the Marines. And so she helped him and the entire platoon and more do that. And she was so proud to do that because it was able to save the Marines a few dollars just starting out in the military. So not only did she help a large group of girls in cheer, doing their uniforms, pom-poms, all that sort of thing, but she also helped the United States. She also helped the United States Marine Corps as well. So that's super cool. All right, we'll get started in just a little bit, and I'm also going to do a quick flashback to Sicily, Italy as well, because I ended up finding a note from Joanna, the machine that we just showed, that really cool 1923 15-88. And I ended up missing a note from her that had a bunch of cool pictures of the ladies back in Sicily, Italy back in the day, and also the original owner of the 1588 that I restored for her that's going to be used by her mother, who's going into her 80s or is in her 80s. So I'll also do a flashback of that as well and show you some of those pictures and try to read you Joanna's note also. And you may have heard in my voice, you may have heard in my voice a little bit of emotion, and it's because many of you that know and have been following this channel for some time know that my dad, who passed away recently, also retired from the Marine Corps as a gunnery sergeant. And I shared that with Mary and James. And so whenever I think of the Marines, I get just a little bit emotional. Just a little bit emotional. All right, a little bit more music. I think I'll go to Italy for a second, and then we'll jump into some more information about this particular machine. Okay. Just bear with me for a second. I'm clicking through some screens on my not so fabulous phone. So that's not Italian. Bear with me for a second here. All right, I'm going to finally pause the music here. So let me flash us back to Italy real quick because I promised Joanna that I would do that. See if I can find those cool pictures. Just bear with me for a second here. So I'll read you what Joanna wrote first. And I had totally missed this. I could have read this at the live stream I did on her machine, and somehow I missed this note through Facebook. I don't always get notifications of Facebook things, and so that just happens. So she writes, "Hi, Scott. I'll give you a little bit of information regarding this little jewel. This machine belonged to a wonderful little lady who lived in the mountains of Sicily, Italy. The town name is Militello Rosmarino. Rosmarino. I'm probably not doing very well at that. And here's a picture of that little lady that she's referring to. See if I can find her. This is that little lady right here. She's really quite a lovely gal. And she looks Italian, doesn't she? Just casually leaning against her like, yeah, I know I'm gorgeous. I know I'm gorgeous. All right, I'm hitting back. Let me see. I don't want to go too far back. And she writes on, wait a second. She shares a lot here, so hang with me for a second. So the lady's name, hold on a second. Oh, she doesn't share her name. Oh, her name, here it is. Her name was Adele, and I have had the privilege to have known her. She was born November 20th, 1910, and passed away December 21st, 1972. Adele migrated to America with her husband, her children, and brought with her her beloved sewing machine. Her oldest son was not able to come with them as he was already older and not able to get a visa. Later on, Adele became an American citizen and called him to the States. He married my Aunt Josephine, and in turn, she became a citizen and called Joanna and her family to the United States. When Adele died, my aunt inherited this lovely machine. I lost my aunt this past year. She was a lovely and wonderful woman, full of joy and love. And now I am the owner of this lovely machine. Not this machine that you're looking at here, but the previous live stream, that 1923 Singer 15-88. You can rewind and watch that if you somehow missed that live stream. And now Joanna is the owner of that lovely 1923 1588 Singer machine. And she's so grateful to have had the opportunity to have found Cow Country, knowing that you take your work very seriously and will be bringing her back to her former glory. It gives Joanna a great sense of hope and joy. The sewing machine is not only beautiful, but was meticulously taken care of for Joanna. It symbolizes a story of endurance, hardship, and love that has been tested through the passing of time. So thank you, Scott, for taking on this project. All these ladies were seamstresses. The ladies that she's referring to, I'll show you pictures of them as well, that lived in Sicily, Italy. They were all seamstresses, and they were masters of the art of textiles. And here are some of those pictures. I'll just kind of go through them somewhat quickly and show them to you. So here's some of those ladies right here. I got to alter, hold on, I got to move my screen a little bit. I got to move my screen just a little bit. Here's some of those ladies in Sicily, Italy that were family and kin to Joanna. And they were involved in all kinds of textile work, not just seamstress work and sewing. Some more of those ladies doing their trade. That one's a little bit hard to see. There we go. Italian people are so beautiful in spirit and otherwise, aren't they? Here's some of those ladies gathered together doing some sewing and other stuff. There's the original owner of Joanna's machine, that 1923 1588 Singer machine. If you missed it in the last live stream, check it out. It's well worth watching. You get to watch me turn the balance wheel by hand because it's a treadle machine. There's an original box of attachments for the 1588. Original instruction manual. And I also gave, Susie and I gave Joanna a special gift. We gave her an English version of the same manual, and it was enlarged so she could read it more easily. And she was just moved, deeply moved. You could see with that special gift that we surprised her with. And there's the table that machine from the last live stream is going to be mounted in right there. Lovely table, isn't it? Yeah. So I like to be a man of my word. I like to be a man of my word. And I told Joanna that I would take time in this live stream, even though the focus is on Mary's machine, Mary's Marine Corps machine. I wanted to circle back to Sicily, Italy, and give you the treat of seeing some of those iconic vintage photos of these beautiful women doing textile work, doing sewing work in the mountains of Sicily, Italy. And you know, there's such a special part of Joanna's life and that family. It's really, really a blessing to the blessing of my work is being able to take machines like this that are struggling and machines like Joanna's and bring them back to greatness again. But the other amazing part of my work is having the privilege and the honor of meeting all of these wonderful people, all of these incredible people that they have such wonderful, warm hearts, such a love for sewing, such a love for creating things, and I have the privilege of introducing them to all of you. How cool is that? It's a special gift. It's a special blessing to be able to do that. So again, I'm guessing that Joanna will see this. Joanna, thank you again so much for bringing a piece of Sicily, Italy to Cow Country and giving us the privilege to see that iconic machine from 1923. And now you can give it to your mother to carry on that tradition. And yeah, what a neat thing. What a neat thing. Now, let me see if I can do a quick little interlude and then we'll move into this machine. Now, let me give you also a little test. Let me give all of you a little test. Let me give you a little test. Hold on. And if you're watching this right now, it looks like we've got a pretty good sized gathering of folks. Would you be so kind as to take a moment when you can, and click like on the live stream if you would. It's going to be great. I know you'll love it. So don't be afraid to do that in advance. Don't be afraid to do that in advance. Okay. So if you're watching right now, if you're in that audience of 1,600 folks or so, click like. And if you see me pause periodically, it's not because I'm having a brain cramp or something. We've got all of these horrible little flies that have gotten into the workshop area. I've been eliminating them one by one, but it seems like they keep bringing their Uncle Vinny and their Aunt Mabel and everybody else to torment me. So periodically, if I pause, it's because I'm fighting these creepy little winged monsters that are trying to disrupt the live stream. They're horrible things, horrible, horrible things. Okay, what else was I going to share? I just need to make sure I'm not missing anything. Thank you so much, folks. Thank you. I see you're clicking like right now. Thank you so much for doing that. It helps the visibility of our live streams and our videos so that others will find it then, and they're going to learn about great machines like this Singer here. But I'm going to give you guys a little test. I told you I was going to do that. I'm going to give you a little test first. Hold on just a second. Tell you what, while I'm giving you a test, let me put on some music for you. Hold on. Let me put some music on for you. There's so much to do in a live stream, and I'm doing it all by myself. My little friends that you see periodically, they help a little bit, but they're usually busy doing other things. Okay, for those of you that weren't here at the beginning, there's one of those little buggers right there. Ha ha! He saw me going for something, and he's like, I'm going to torment you. Hold on. Ha ha! There's one less. You guys have gnat problems and stuff where you're at too? I wonder. All right. So this machine, again, if you missed it at the beginning, this machine was used by Mary to sew hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of nameplates for young Marines along with her son. So I'm going to play that Marine Corps music one more time while I'm getting ready here, and I hope you enjoy it. Okay? So Semper Fi, oorah! My finger got too happy there. Okay, so now for your little test after just hearing the Marine Corps hymn, um, I want you to try to figure out where this particular machine was made. We're talking about country of origin. You might know that Singer had plants all around the world. And this machine was made at one of those plants around the world. So I'm going to give you some clues so you can try to guess where it was made. Also, if you want to type in the live chat as well, what size motor do you think this machine has? That'll be your 2 questions on your midterm test. Now that class is officially in session, okay? So here's your clues. This country holds the title of the world's most biodiverse country and has the greatest number of FIFA World Cup wins. Okay, I know those are kind of obtuse facts or clues, but that's what I'm going to give you to start with. It holds the title of the world's most biodiverse country, and it has the greatest number of FIFA World Cup wins, a total of 5, by the way. It shares a border with several single countries like South America, Chile. What else can I give you? Hold on a second. It shares a border also with South America, Chile, and Ecuador. So I don't know if that's helping you at all, if that's getting you any closer to where Mary's machine was made, but those are some of the clues. They also make they also grow giant cashews there. They've got a Japanese hub. What else? They have a place called Snake Island. That sounds kind of terrifying, doesn't it? It's off the coast of this country, and it's famously home of 2,000 to 4,000 critically endangered golden lancehead pit vipers. I don't think I'd like to go to that island. Snake Island, 2,000 to 4,000 endangered golden lancehead pit vipers. Yikes. They also have pink dolphins around this country as well. Pink dolphins. That's cool. And their biggest pastimes are football and religion. That's interesting. Yeah. All right. Let me see if any of you are getting closer. Let's see here. Wow, Susie had a bunch of retracted messages. A bunch of retracted messages. Teresa, you are such a smarty pants. Teresa just makes it.
That was easy. That was easy. That was easy.
Teresa makes it easy, doesn't she? She's such a smarty pants. Teresa's right. This machine was built by Singer in Brazil, but it doesn't have a 0.75 amp motor. It's got a 1 amp motor. So about 0.25 tenths of an amp higher than what Teresa guessed, but great guessing on Teresa's part. Teresa and Tim have been our dear friends and have been to Kentucky and are looking to relocate to Kentucky. And it's always so much of pleasure and a blessing to have them in the live streams. They get out of the shadows and they jump in with both feet. Sometimes they're right, sometimes they're wrong. I think the last live stream, Teresa jumped in and gave the dating of that machine that I just represented to you from Sicily, Italy, that 1923 Singer 15-88, and Teresa had a different date. So you know what? We're sometimes teachers. We're always students. We're always learning, aren't we? We're always learning and rejoining things. Yeah. So Brazil is right, and 0.75 amps is incorrect. It's 1 amp. Okay, all right, I'll get back on track here. Wow. We got a big audience today, over 2,000 folks. That's kind of cool. So let me tell you about the machines that came out of Brazil. And specifically this model. This model is the 5808C. 5808C. And it came in basically 4 different versions. It came as a 5-stitch machine. It came as a 6-stitch machine. It came as an 8-stitch machine. And it came as a 10-stitch machine. So there were 5 different versions or flavors of the 5808C. The problem that they ran into in Brazil is they didn't always have the greatest quality control. And so things kind of got mismatched sometimes, and they sent out a bunch of machines around the world that were misfits. And by misfits, I mean that sometimes they ended up putting 5-stitch machines. I'm not counting the buttonhole. Ha ha! I never count buttonholes. Some of the 5-stitch machines left Brazil in the housing of 8-stitch machines. Some of the 8-stitch machines left Brazil with the housing of 10-stitch machines. And there were a lot of mismatch machines and a lot of misfits. So as people started to sit down to their machines, they either found that they had a lot more stitches than they thought they would, or they had a lot fewer stitches than they realized that they should have. Does that make sense? They had a lot of misfits leaving Brazil. Nothing against Brazil. Brazil's a beautiful country, but their plant sometimes got goofed up, and they would put together machines that were in the wrong housing. And so Mary's machine is one of those examples. It's in the housing where you would anticipate it would be an 8-stitch machine, but in fact, it only has 5 stitches. Only 5 stitches. It's got a straight, a zigzag, a blind hem, a 3-point zigzag, and then the not so coveted 4-stage buttonhole. So today we're going to be putting this machine to work that came out of Brazil as a misfit with its 5 stitches. We're only going to be doing 4 of those stitches technically because we're not going to do a buttonhole, but we're going to have a lot of fun with this machine nonetheless. We're going to have a lot of fun. So if you want to look up a little bit more on the 5808C, the different versions it had, the 5, the 6, the 8, and the 10-stitch versions, do that at the end of class so you don't get distracted, because I'm going to show you now how to thread this machine, and then we're going to get to work putting it through the paces on a variety of different materials. We're going to sew leather, we're going to sew denim, we're going to sew military grade canvas, and we're going to sew cotton. And I might even grab some of that vintage velvet. Maybe we'll go down some vintage velvet as well and do some stitching on that also. But that happened with the Singer plants around the world. They would set up these plants, they would hire workers that knew nothing about sewing machines, and then they would train them on the job, type training, and they would start pushing these machines out very rapidly out of the various factories around the world. It might have been in France, it might have been in Italy, it might have been like this one in Brazil, and for the most part, they did a pretty good job, but sometimes they didn't do so great. And so, surprise, 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 you never know what flavor machine you're going to get. You might get an extra scoop. You might get a machine that has fewer scoops than you expected. So there you go. While I'm saying that, let me put on a little bit of music from Brazil. At least they said it's Brazil. And then we'll jump into this machine, okay? All right, let me see if I can find Brazil, Brazil, Brazil. I know I've got it. Here we go. I don't know. I'm not buying it. I don't think that's Brazilian music. I don't think it is. I don't think that's Brazilian music. But let's go into the threading of this machine now. And it's going to be a little bit awkward for me to do it with one hand, but I'm going to do my best. I'm going to do my best. Let's see what you can see here. Maybe for this initial threading, maybe I should, as I go, I'll just stop and I'll grab the camera. So I'm going to go ahead and put this spool of thread on. Our setup today, no surprise. Our setup today is a Schmetz 9014 universal needle. And then we're using our Coates & Clark dual duty XP thread. Now, the main complaint that Mary had about this machine when I met her and James in Middlesboro, Kentucky, to collect up this machine and bring it to the workshop, is the thread would not stay on the take-up arm. It kept coming off. And as I went through the machine through a very, very detailed process called Workshop Magic, I discovered that there were a number of things going on with the machine. Also, that it had quite a bit of rust on the inside of it. I'm going to get these pictures posted hopefully later today or tomorrow on Facebook, but I'll just walk you through them real quick and show you some of these pictures. See if I can find the beginning of them. I'll just walk you through these real quick, okay? So there's our launching point right there. Begin to tear the machine down and get into the machine. Oh, that's the wrong way. There's our take-up arm. I was checking the take-up arm out real carefully to make sure there was nothing wrong with it. I'll just go through these real fast. You're going to see them on Facebook in greater clarity and more detail. A lot of old grease. If you've got an older machine and it hasn't been serviced properly, it's going to have a lot of caramelized grease on it that hardens like clay, and then it doesn't do anything as far as lubricating and giving a motion to the machine, it just kind of locks it up. It's one of our belts. Prong plugins, more old grease. I think you can see some of these, hopefully. That's a mess, huh? There's some of our rust right there. I found rust throughout the machine, even on the presser foot as well. So this machine at some point was stored in a damp place, or it was in a damp environment, and it developed a lot of rust issues throughout the machine. Yeah, I won't go through all these, but I'll get these posted on Facebook, and then you can see the process that I took Mary's machine through. After I went through the machine, I discovered that it had a take-up spring that was partially out of alignment, and it also was frozen with some of that old grease. And so what I had to do when I took the machine apart is I had to free up that take-up spring, carefully bend it back into alignment again, because what was happening is that take-up arm was going up and down. That check spring should be going the opposite way, keeping that thread in that notch on the take-up arm. It wasn't doing that. So that's why Mary was getting real frustrated, and that thread kept coming out of the take-up arm because that check spring in here wasn't pulling in the opposite direction to hold it in place. It was frozen. It was frozen in place. So all is well now, and we'll get this machine threaded, and then we'll put it to work, and you'll be able to check it out a little bit more. Okay, so we start real basic. We just start by putting our spool on the horizontal feed. And ideally, you want to have a larger spool retainer than this one right here. You want to have one that's going to be as big as the spool of thread, or even maybe a little bit bigger. And what that does is it ensures that that thread doesn't get caught on one of the rough edges of the thread spool. It's going to get over that smooth edge, and you're not going to get any unexpected, snags or fraying or anything like that. So I would recommend when Mary gets the machine back, if she's got a larger one of these, she goes ahead and puts that on. As a matter of fact, I might have one in reserve. I don't know if it'll fit this machine or not, but I'll try to grab that, and we'll put that on to make sure that we don't have any thread feed issues. So after that, we're going to go through this little part right here and snap it into place. I'll set the camera down again. We'll get that snapped into place. Get that thread first of all. There's a lot of things that thread can get snagged on. So when you draw that into that little thread guide, you're going to kind of hear it snap into place. There we go. There it's snapped into place. Okay, so I've got that in there now. And always when you're threading a sewing machine, you're going to make sure that your presser foot lever in the back here, your presser foot lever is in the up position, so it doesn't have any pressure on the discs, okay? So after that, we're going to bring it through this thread guide right here. I'm going to try to do that one-handed. There we go. We brought it through that little thread guide right there. And this obviously is your tensioner here for winding a bobbin. If you happen to be winding a bobbin, you'll come from the spool. I don't recommend going through this thread guide back here. Go from the spool directly to this tensioner, and then around the tensioner to the bobbin winder. And you got the bobbin winder right here. You just engage that like that. But you also have to push this in right over here. There's a little place to push in so that it disengages the clutch, so your needle isn't moving when you're sewing, okay? So we've got it through from here to here to here. Now I'm going to see if I can tilt the machine a little bit to do the rest of the threading, and I'll angle the camera so you can kind of see it. See what I'm doing. See if I can do this here. Turn the machine like this. Move the camera over just a little bit. Okay, so now coming off the top here, we're going to drop straight down through this little track. See that little track right there? We're going to drop down through that track. And then we're going to come underneath through the tension discs. And whenever you're coming through the tension discs, I recommend that you hold the thread on top. I'm actually holding the thread on top right now so I can draw it up with a little bit more force to make sure that it goes into those tension discs, and it also goes into that take-up spring that was seized before. Now I'm going to draw it through our take-up arm. There's a little notch in the back. I'll draw it through there. There we go. Now I'm going to come back down the same track like this. Okay. And now I've got an interesting little threader here. It looks like a little curlicue threader. I'm going to come around from left to right. Come around from left to right, and you kind of swivel it through that. And we've got another thread guide down here. Just above the needle, you bring it in from right to left. There we go. I think I got it in there. Sort of, kind of. And now we're going to thread that needle from front to back, and the flat side is going to go to the rear when you put the needle into this machine, okay? All right, let me just tilt it a little bit more so I can get my big hands in there. I'll see if I can thread it left-handed. I don't know if I can or not, so we'll see. And I got a little bit of a fray on the bottom of that, so I'm going to cut that off so I've got a nice smooth edge of the thread to go through the needle. And once I get to this point, I usually drop my presser foot. It's a little bit easier. We'll push that thread through. There we go. Raise your presser foot again. And this particular presser foot's going to have a little opening on the left side, so I'm going to draw the thread through there as best as I can. A lot easier if I'm facing the machine. I'm kind of coming from the side. There we go. So we've got the upper threading done now. We've got the upper threading done now. Hopefully I did that slow enough. We went from here to back here, down this track after we went through this little thread guide right here. And then we went around the tension discs and the take-up spring right about in there. Came up to the take-up arm, right to left, dropped back down through here. We went through our thread guide right there, our other thread guide right there. And then we threaded the needle from front to back, okay? Front to back. Now we got to get a bobbin in there. And I'll tell you that this raceway setup on this Brazilian machine is a little bit tricky. In order to make adjustments more easily to the bobbin case, if you have to kind of take it out. And where most bobbin cases, if you can see it in the shot, where most bobbin cases will ride on top of the rim of the hook assembly right there. This particular bobbin case actually sits on a lower ledge below that upper ledge. So you've got to make sure that you put it in properly. Otherwise, you won't be able to get that plate back on so you can get back to sewing. I'm also going to put a little drop of oil on the edge of that to keep it running smoothly. And I would recommend you do that probably about every 6 to 8 hours of sewing. Put a little drop of oil next to that bobbin case that's riding on that hook assembly so that it moves more freely. See that? Moves more freely. Okay. So now we're going to drop our bobbin in. And this is going to take a class 66 bobbin. And I would recommend whenever you have a plastic bobbin case, you use a plastic bobbin. We discovered that some of our dear friends over at the Senior Center in La Follette, Tennessee, with their Janome machines, they had metal bobbins that they were using in a plastic bobbin case. That can damage the machine, so don't do that. So we're going to drop our bobbin in with the thread over the top, like so. And then there's a little slat right there. We're going to draw through that slat so it's underneath that tension spring. Kind of pull it a little bit. And then I will reach behind and hold the thread. Got to kind of do this awkwardly here. Hold that thread and we'll pull that bobbin thread up. There we go. We'll close our little slide plate. And another quick little tip for you all as you're watching, um, if you decide you want to do a thorough cleaning on this raceway area, to get this plate off right here, this slide plate, you're going to have to take this plate off and then slide this plate to the rear of the machine. And you have to do the opposite when you're putting it back on. You have to slide it from the rear of the machine back forward again. Okay? So don't try pulling it off this way, or you're going to break the little flange that holds it on place. You'll slide it this way with this plate off. Make sure your needle is clear. You probably take your presser foot off it to make it a little bit easier. And you just slide this plate and it'll come off straight away. Okay? All right, let me get that closed. And this is a little free arm here that gives you a little bit more workspace, probably about 2 more inches, not a huge amount. And we could easily take this off if we wanted to during the live stream, but I think we'll just leave it on. It's not really in the way. And you might notice the sewing area is a little bit brighter. It's a little bit brighter because I replaced the incandescent bulb, this one, with one of the LED bayonet style ones. So if you have a machine like this 5808C, you'll want to look at replacing that bayonet style incandescent with an LED version. They're a lot less, they're a lot brighter, and they produce a lot less heat as well. So they're really a nice upgrade to the machine. The other thing that I had to replace on Mary's machine, I'll just show it to you right here, is the bobbin case itself. It had a small crack. It had a small crack in that part of the bobbin case right there. And when I went to reinstall it, that crack finished off and this little piece came off. So I had to put in a new bobbin case as well for this 5808. But other than the rust and the issue with the bobbin case, there were no other major mechanical issues other than the fact that it doesn't have the cam stack that the housing of the machine says it has. It has a different cam stack that only produces the buttonhole and then the other utility stitches. So, but it's a great little machine. It's a strong machine as well. And I think we should put it to work. So let's do that. Let's put this machine to work. Drop our presser foot. We'll do some basic stitching. The only other criticism I would offer about this particular model, the 5808C, is it does not have an adjuster for presser foot pressure. You can't adjust it. It's going to be a self-regulating thing. It's going to be an auto type thing. And sometimes they work great, sometimes they don't. So we'll see how it does in this live stream today. Okay? Let me just back up this machine just a little bit. And we'll start with a real basic straight stitch, a larger one. I'll show you how we set that up real quick. So we got some basic controls on this model. We've got this little lever right here for straight stitch, for zigzag, and then mega zigzag. We've got needle position here, and we've got stitch selection here. So I've set this to straight, set this to a center needle position, set this to a straight stitch as well. And then I'm going to adjust my stitch length over here. So I'm going to go to the longest one I can do, which is 5. And yeah, and then we'll go ahead and launch into some basic utility type stitching with Mary's machine that was used to do hundreds and hundreds of Marine Corps uniform nameplates. Okay, all right, let's give this a go. I got to get my foot on this electronic controller. All right, here we go. And I'll go through several utility stitches and then we'll look at all of them together. Okay. All right, here we go. All right. So we did a nice little straight stitch, or I should say a nice big straight stitch. Now we're going to reduce the length of that. We'll reduce the length of that straight stitch significantly. And then we will jump into a zigzag and some of the other utility stitches that this machine will do. So we're going to shorten up that straight stitch quite a bit now. Get that right there. Just going to adjust my straight stitch length right over here. Turning it like this. We'll go to right around 2.5 maybe. Right about to there. And if you're looking at this right here, what this is our reverse. And it's got a calibration right here for certain stitch output and buttonholes. So you can adjust it left or right to get certain fine tuning adjustments to those stitches or to those buttonholes as well. But it's got a real nice reverse on it also. Very, very nice big button to access that. Okay, so there's our straight stitching. Let's do a much shorter straight stitch now. And listen to this machine operates. We just put a little bit of oil on the top of the hook. So as that oil is settling in around that bobbin case that I just installed, it's going to create a little bit more sound. But when it's running otherwise, it runs very, very quietly. Very, very quiet machine. All right, short straight stitch. Here we go. Oh, I stopped a little bit short. Here we go. There we go. Yeah, some beautiful stitching. I'm excited to show this stitching to you. And you notice with the repair that I did to that check spring that was seized and was gummed up with old oil and was also misaligned a little bit, we're not having any issue at all like Mary was experiencing with that thread coming out of the take-up arm, because that check spring is keeping it in check. It's keeping it in check and keeping it from coming out of position. All right, let's do a zigzag now. So I'm going to make a couple of changes. I'm going to move our adjuster over here. Oh, and I didn't point out upper tension right here. I'm sorry about that. Upper tension right here. You can see we're in a modest range right here, around 5.5. So our bobbin case in the raceway is adjusted in such that we don't need to crank this way up for most of our sewing. So we're going to move this over to zigzag now. There we go, right about there. And we're going to move this over to zigzag right there. And now we got to decide on our stitch length. Probably go to right around 4, something like that. Right around in that range, 4. And then, yeah, let's give this zigzag a go. And then we'll move on to some of the other utility stitches that this machine will do. Okay. All right. So here we go with a zigzag. Yeah, there we go. I think we could do a bigger one than that. Maybe I'll do one more zigzag, a little bit bigger, a little bit wider. I'll go to that wide setting on the machine, and we'll see if we can really, really stretch this puppy out. Okay. All right, so one more zigzag. Let's try to beef up that zigzag a little bit. So we're going to move our lever from here right over to here. And maybe we'll also increase our stitch length a little bit, give it a little bit more room to work, right around 4.5. All right, so another zigzag. We'll see if we can beef that puppy up a little bit. All right, here we go. Yeah, there we go. That's a zigzag. That's a zigzag right there. Yeah, I like that. All right, let's go through a blind hem stitch and then a 3-point zigzag. And then we'll move on to some other materials. See if we can have some fun with some other materials as well and get back to our idea of a little bit of a sewing Olympics and giving a good field of materials for this machine to try to sew. And if you don't know it, a week from today is National Sewing Machine Day. Did anyone know that? A week from today is National Sewing Machine Day. So if we do a live stream that day, we'll have to do something, a little bit special. Maybe, I don't know what we'll do. Maybe we'll get some of our friends to come out and dance or whatever, but we'll do something a little bit special if we do a live stream a week from today to celebrate National Sewing Machine Day. Okay? All right. Let's see here. Let's go ahead and do a a blind hem stitch. Now I'm going to shorten my stitch length a little bit. I'll move us back to a normal setting over here. And we'll move us over to here, to that one. We'll shorten our stitch length to, right around 2.5 or 3. So let's do a blind hem now, and then we'll do that 3-point zigzag last. All right, here we go. Yeah, stopped a little bit early again. There we go. Yeah, lovely blind hem. That actually looks like a stretch blind hem to me. Looks kind of like a stretch blind hem stitch. We'll take a close look at these in just a little bit. And now we'll do a 3-point zigzag. I'll make that one a little bit shorter. I like those nice and tight. So off camera, I'm just adjusting my stitch length a little bit shorter. Probably about 1.5. And then I'm going to move our stitch selector over to this final range right over here. And we'll lay down a 3-point zigzag next. Okay? All right, here we go. Yeah, that's not quite the look I wanted, but that's still a good looking 3-point zigzag. It's quite lovely. Yeah, very, very nice. I'm going to give it a little bit more, see if we can modify the look of that by moving our stitch selector over here to a wider setting. And we'll give it just we'll still keep it short. We'll still keep it short. See if we can change the look of that 3-point zigzag just a little bit. Give it a little bit more girth. A little bit more girth, I think. Yeah. So you might be saying, you mentioned that Mary's machine had rust throughout the whole machine. What do you do for something like that? Well, you've got to mitigate it. It's kind of a tedious process, but you use a combination of rubbing alcohol to kind of soften it a little bit. And then you follow up with a combination of sewing machine oil and kerosene. Kerosene is a natural rust inhibitor, so it'll strip the rest of that rust off, and then it'll shield that metal from the reoccurrence of rust again. It's about a 4 or 5 step process. Takes a little while to do it properly because you got to really, really dig into the machine and get it all. Otherwise, it comes back. And the machines from Japan are notorious for that because of the metal that they used on those machines. I've talked about that before. They used the sunken Navy vessels from World War II, and that metal had been sitting in salt water. So over the time, the Kenmore machines, a lot of them will have major rust issues because of the metal that they used. I'm not sure where they sourced their metal for the Brazil production plant, but there may have been some issues there as well. Maybe because Brazil is surrounded by a lot of water, and maybe because of that damp environment, maybe how they stored the metal or something like that. All right, let's try this 3-point zigzag again. Let me angle this down so you can watch. 3-point zigzag, a little bit on the wider side. Let's see if we get a different look. Yeah, that changes the look dramatically, doesn't it? That's a dramatic change as far as the appearance. So it just goes to show you, even if your machine has fewer stitches than you might want, by adjusting the stitch width and the stitch length, you can change the look of those stitches dramatically. So let's take a closer look at these stitches that we've laid down already on this Brazilian-made Singer model 5808C. Again, it had a variety of different subversions of this: 5-stitch, a 6-stitch, an 8-stitch, and a 10-stitch machine. All right, let's take a look at these stitches and then we'll move on. I keep bumping my little power thing for the machine, maybe I'll plug it into a different source. Hold on a second. There we go. That's a little bit more secure. All right, so here's the stitching we've done so far on Mary's machine. We started with a large straight stitch right there. You can kind of see that. We shortened that stitch up dramatically. Then we went to a zigzag, not so wide. Then we widened that zigzag quite a bit. We went through a blind hem stitch. We did a 3-point zigzag on that second to the last row. And then I moved it to a wider setting. And then all of a sudden, we got a very different look for that 3-point zigzag also. But some beautiful, beautiful stitching by this 5808. I have no doubt that when Mary was doing nameplates on Marine Corps uniforms, they didn't get any demerits for the appearance of the stitching. I'm sure that machine laid down a gorgeous straight stitch back then, and they would have gotten high marks from their commanders and drill instructors on how their uniforms presented. So we turn it over, look at that lock stitching. Some beautiful lock stitching as well. Even on that larger straight stitch, you sometimes might need a little bit more tension there, but all in all, it looks really good. All of our lock stitching looks quite nice on this Brazilian 5808. So I think what we'll do now is we'll take just a little interlude so I can rest my voice for a second. And I'm going to go ahead and move on to some other materials sewing, just to give you an idea of how the machine is going to do on those other materials. A little bit more Brazilian type music. At least YouTube is saying it's Brazilian. I don't know if it truly is, but we'll see what we think of this, okay? All right, I'm going to pause that. I don't think that's Brazilian music. It sounds more like a coffee house type music, but at any rate, I guess YouTube knows more about music than I do. So what I pulled out is some of this vintage velvet material. You saw that in one of the other live streams that I did recently. It's a little bit of a tricky material because it's got that acrylic backing on it. It's about as slippery as snot. It's a real slippery material. So we'll see how that auto feed for that presser foot does on this model 5808C from Brazil. We'll see how it does and if it keeps that material feeding evenly and true, or whether or not it allows it to slip a little bit. And I think we'll launch into, we're already set up to do that 3-point zigzag. We'll try a 3-point zigzag on here and see how it handles that, that vintage velvet material. And then we'll lay down a couple of other stitches on this material as well, so we can see how it presents. Okay, so a little bit of vintage velvet material. Again, a combination, I showed it to you in the other live stream, combination of 29% acrylic 9% adhesive, and 62% polyester. And even back in the day, it was made in China. I guess that's not horribly vintage. 2008, it looks like, huh? Yeah. I don't know. I bought this at a thrift shop. So I guess from 2008, it's kind of sort of vintage, almost. Kind of sort of vintage. All right, let's give this a go, a 3-point zigzag, and then we'll move on to some other stitching after that. You see, once that oil settled in that I put by the bobbin case, we were getting like a little bit of extra sound. Now it's just humming. Now it's just a hummer, just humming along. Yeah, really quite nice. That acrylic and that adhesive, though, goofs around with that lock stitch a little bit. We'll take a look at that. We saw that in the other live stream as well. We'll lay down maybe a blind hem and a good zigzag on here as well. And then we'll look at all the stitching. But this is one of those materials, if you were doing a lot of sewing on this vintage velvet, you'd want to bump up your upper tension. Right now, we're only set, like I said, right at about 5.5. We would probably want to go up to 7.5 to really tighten up that lock stitch on the bottom. It looks a little bit loosey-goosey right now. Matter of fact, for other stitching, I'll bump it up just temporarily from 5.5 up to almost, we'll do like 6.5. See if that helps. We went up just about 1 mark. We'll see if that tightens up that lock stitch a little bit on this tricky vintage velvet material. All right, so let's do a real wide zigzag now. I'm already set over here. Now I just need to move my selector back over to here. And then we'll adjust this a little bit as well, up to right around a little bit shy of 4. So we'll try a zigzag on this now, a super wide zigzag. The top looks really good. The bottom is a little bit loosey-goosey. So that's why we're going to adjust up our upper tension a little bit to see if we can tighten up that lock stitch on the bottom of the material. Okay? All right, a super wide zigzag now. And hopefully our tension is going to be high enough to maintain all of those points of the zigzag stitch design. Okay, here we go. All right, stop right there. Yeah, we did pretty good with the zigzag. Actually, we could use a little bit more tension in a couple of spots. We'll look at that more closely, but that's an easy fix. It's an easy fix as far as tightening up that lock stitch on the zigzag. With that being the widest zigzag, I'm pleased that we got the result that we did with only adjusting the upper tension up just slightly. We only bumped it up a little bit. So now we'll lay down a blind hem next to that. Lay down a blind hem stitch right next to that, and then we'll take a look at the stitching. So I'm going to leave that the way it is. It could go to there, but I'll leave it there. We'll go over to our blind hem right there. And we're going to shorten it up a little bit. Bring it down, bring it down, bring it down. Just about 2.5 on the stitch length right here. All right, so a blind hem stitch now. It's kind of a stretch blind hem. It's stretch blind hem stitch to me. And we'll see how we do on this tricky velvet material from the early 2000s. Okay. Now that's a blind hem stitch. That's like a mega blind hem stitch. Ha ha! I like that. Yeah, that's a beautiful one. Very nice. Yeah, and it handled that. It all in all handled that material much better with that slight adjustment to that upper tension. It did much better than it did earlier. And again, we're just doing one-offs here. You know, we're not sewing this material all day long, 6 hours a day. We just want to see how this machine responds to that. We're using a universal needle, which is a pretty good needle for something like this. Take a look at that stitching. And I'm just seeing a couple of tension factors that we would have to deal with if we were going to be sewing this vintage velvet material a lot. We'd have to really look at that tension factor with it. So our top stitching looks really good. Our top stitching looks bang on with our 3-point zigzag, with our real wide zigzag, and then also with our stretch blind hem stitch right on the bottom there. Looks really, really good. Could, as I'm looking at this with a little bit more scrutiny with this 3-point zigzag, because there's so many points that needle is hitting, 3 points on each side, we may have to make a look at adjusting that bobbin case up a little bit. If we were going to be sewing this particular stitch a lot, we would have to probably do an adjustment on that, because it's good, but it's not as good as it could be. Waiting for the camera to catch up here. There we go. Let's look at it like this as well. Yeah, you can see the definition of the 3-point zigzag, but it could have just a little bit more clarity. Just a little bit more clarity. But it is some lovely, lovely stitching. Lovely stitching. Now, if we turn it over, we look at the lock stitching. Here's where it gets interesting. You can see that zigzag is nicely defined, but it doesn't have the level of definition of the top stitching for that 3-point zigzag. You really can't see any of the markers. You can't see any of the markers on the left side or the right side, which is telling us that with that acrylic and with that adhesive that's a part of this vintage velvet, we would really have to look at tension adjustments to get a nicely defined lock stitch using this vintage velvet material. It's a tricky material. Just like down here, you can see on this particular zigzag that we did super wide, just a little bit of a weakness there on those 2 stitches right there, with the upper tension not being set quite high enough. Even though we bumped it up, we didn't bump it up quite high enough. And then it got into a nice rhythm going through the rest of the material, and it tried to maintain it very nicely. But here we're a little bit sloppy on that 3-point zigzag. We could tighten it up by bumping that upper tension up, or by decreasing the bobbin pull as well. We could do that as well. It'd be easier to adjust it up top. Here we did really well on that stretch blind hem stitch. We got some nice definition coming here on the joining points, but it could have even a greater amount of clarity here. You can see on the corners, we dropped that stitch just a little bit because of that upper tension not being able to pull as hard through this acrylic adhesive-based vintage velvet material. It's got all kinds of goop that they added to it, doesn't it? And it kind of goofs around with our stitching a little bit. But we've got our top stitching looking really good. We would just have to do some fine adjustments to tighten this up on this tricky material, because you're going through all kinds of gobbledygook right there. You see that? They've got acrylic in there. They got adhesive. They got all kinds of junky monkey stuff going on that's messing around with how the thread and how the needle are interacting with that material. But all in all, a beautiful, beautiful stitch. Beautiful stitch by this machine that belongs to Mary. Yeah, very, very nice. So let's move on to a little bit of leather now. And I did not test this off camera, so I hope I don't goof up. But I'm going to try a single layer of this 100% cowhide. I had to think for a second there. This 100% cowhide. It's probably about 6 to 8 ounces of leather. Look at it like that. Not a thin sew off at all. But this machine, again, has a 1-amp motor. So I think it's going to do just fine. I think it's going to do just fine. You look at it from the side as well. There's our nap right there. So we're going to try to lay down the trickiest stitch to try on a material like this 100% leather cowhide is going to be a super wide zigzag. So I'm going to try a super wide zigzag, but I'm going to make an adjustment to that upper tension first so that hopefully we'll have success. Get that set up right there. So right now we're just shy of 7, right? I'm going to go just a little bit above 7. Just a little bit above 7. I just don't want to go too high, because if I go too high, I'm going to be sacrificing that top stitch, right? Those of you that are brand new to sewing or you don't understand the tension factor, the upper tension here is going to be pulling up on the thread to define what's on the bottom of the material. The bobbin case that's floating on top of that, that rotating hook down below is going to be pulling down to define the top stitch. They're in a tug of war going like this. This is pulling up, this is pulling down. So with that tug of war going on, if we give too much muscle to this, it's going to steal our definition on the top of the material. So we don't want to go too far. Hopefully I didn't go too far. So let's set it for that super wide zigzag. We're already set over here. Needle position is fine. Now we need to go all the way back over here to this zigzag setting, right to there. And then I'll set our stitch length right around 3.5. Yeah, 3.5, somewhere in that range. Maybe a little bit further, 3.25. And let's see how this Brazilian model 5808C does on this 5 to 6 ounces of genuine cowhide leather. Okay, we'll see how it does. And you can see my presser. See, if you look real close right here, you can see I don't have that material all the way underneath the presser foot. I've got it set a little bit too far forward. That can be a mistake because of the feed factor. Hopefully that auto adjustment on that presser foot pressure will grab it. The feed dogs will grab it, and we won't get any delay in launching. But I wanted to get it close to the end so we can look at a long string of that zigzag. Hopefully I didn't make a mistake with getting that thing to launch. I think we're going to be okay. All right, so let's give this a try. 5 to 6 ounces of genuine cowhide leather. Let's give this a try, and I'll give it enough gas, hopefully, to get us launching. Let me get our take-up arm all the way up. You can see our take-up arm is quite a ways down right now. There it goes. There it goes. Always try to launch with it in this position right here, as high as you can get it, so it doesn't bind the machine, okay? All right, here we go. A super wide zigzag on some pretty thick leather. All right, here we go. Now I'm taking it slow. I'm barely pushing the foot controller. I could race down that leather. It's got a lot of power, this machine. Mary's machine's got a lot of grit. But I decided to take it slow just to give that tension a better opportunity. And that was the right thing to do. Look at that stitch. That's our lock stitch. That was the right thing to do. Sometimes you got to slow the machine down a little bit to give it a chance to do its job and to give it a chance to have success. Give those threads a clip, and we'll look at this leather sew off, which is really, really quite lovely. Really quite lovely. So there's our top stitching right there. Some beautiful, beautiful leather sewing. There's our top stitching with that zigzag. I'll tell you, folks, it doesn't get much better than that. That is spectacular. Wow. Look at it like this as well, vertically. That is gorgeous, gorgeous stitching. Now here's where the real pleasant surprise comes in. We went through all that leather, right? We're not using a leather needle. We're using a 9014 universal needle by Schmetz, and we're using a basic Coats & Clark dual duty XP thread, nothing fancy. But we laid down stitching that absolutely is brag-worthy. Absolutely is brag-worthy. Look at that. And this 5808C made it look easy. I got to do it. I got to hit the button.
That was easy. That was easy.
There was no hesitation on the part of the machine at all with that 1 amp motor and with the machine fully optimized now. It just ate that leather up. It just ate it up. Did a fabulous job. Let's look at that lock stitch now. We'll turn it over and look at that lock stitch on the back of the nap here. Beautiful, beautiful lock stitching as well. Beautiful lock stitching. And that bump up on the tension made all the difference, didn't it? That bump up on the tension really, really saved us. Very nice. Very, very nice. So beautiful, beautiful lock stitching. Beautiful top stitching through a lot of leather. 5 to 6 ounces of leather is about the thickness of a lot of belts. So this machine that belongs to Mary just went through the equivalent of a belt, and it made it look super duper easy. That's our thickness right there. And that's 100% cowhide, folks. 100% cowhide. Laying down stitching like that. And like that. Lovely, lovely sew off. Beautiful sew off. So what do we go on to next? We probably should move on to some denim, right? We probably could move on to some denim. And this foot controller, I'll show you the foot controller real quick. It's an electronic one. This is the foot controller right here. It's a nice, big, bulky electronic foot controller. You can kind of see it right there. And again, the benefit of an electronic foot controller is I can use this to sew very, very slow, and it's not going to overheat. If I try that on a traditional Bakelite foot controller or some of those Mercury-style foot controllers that have that rheostat in them, they're real popular with the Japanese machine and the Kenmores. Those things, if you sew slow for an extended period of time, maybe just minutes, it'll start to heat up very, very quickly. But this one, we've done a fair amount of sewing on it already, and it's going to be real close to the ambient temperature for the room. 70 degrees, 70.7 degrees. The bottom of the foot controller as well. Right about there. 69 degrees. And this foot controller was also made by Singer in Brazil as well. I'll show you the bottom of it right there. And you can see that this machine is a 1 amp motor. What is the amperage on this foot controller? I talk about it all the time with the foot controller being the gateway to the electricity that pumps it to the motor, and that the foot controller should always be equal to or greater than the motor. Is this foot controller greater than the motor? What are you seeing? Yeah, you're right, Susie. 1.2 amps. So what that tells you is don't bump it like I just did. I just bumped it with my hand. Hopefully I didn't jam it. What that tells you is this machine is going to have a lot of control with that foot controller. This machine is going to have a lot of control with that foot controller because it's going to have a higher amperage tolerance. That's the benefit of the foot controller having a higher amperage tolerance. A higher amperage tolerance than the motor is it will meter out that energy more evenly and more smoothly. So the way they've set up this Brazilian 5808C is brilliant because it's going to be a very smooth operating machine. It's going to flow into that stitching without racing like some sewing machines do. It's going to be smooth and silky, not jerky. So that was a great job by Singer at that Brazilian plant saying, let's not just give it a 1 amp foot controller. Let's give it a 1.2. It's going to have a little bit more tolerance for that energy and give us a much smoother ride in the sewing process, right? Much smoother ride. Let's see how our bobbin's doing. Yeah, we got enough thread left. So let's do a little bit of denim now. let's do a little bit of denim. I should say a little bit. We're going to do a lot of it. So I've got 4 layers right here. I've got 4 layers of denim right there. Let's see. If I fold it like this, that's 4, 6. We can try 6 layers of denim. That's not an easy sew off. That's what 6 layers of denim looks like right there. 6 layers of denim. I think that's a fair test of this machine. So we're going to go ahead and slide that underneath the presser foot. Get that into position. And this particular machine does have a real modest hyperextension. If you look at it closely, as I move that presser foot lever, watch that presser foot right here. You're probably gaining with that hyperextension about 3 millimeters approximately, maybe a little bit more. So if you got something super thick that you're trying to get underneath the presser foot with your Brazilian-made Singer 5808C, remember you can push that presser foot up just a little bit higher, and you can gain a significant amount more clearance to fit that thicker material or that sew off underneath that presser foot without trying to jam it. Okay, so we're going to try these 6 layers of heavy grade denim. Just make sure I've got it folded properly. 2, 4, 6. Yep, that's right. I'm going to get some of my little clips to try to hold this together. And this will really be a test of that auto presser foot pressure on this machine to see how it holds this material and feeds this material when it's this thick. This is a super thick sew off. Get that first little clip on. I think I'll get another clip on there as well. And these clips, again, were compliments of Paula Noel, a dear friend of ours that lives in West Palm Beach, Florida. And she got these for me years and years and years ago because she said I was using ones that were way too big for the job. I was using ones like these. And she said, you don't need something that big, Scott. You should go with something like this. So I said, okay, thank you. I'll try it. Yeah. And I've only broken one of her clips when I was trying to put it around some thicker stuff. But so let's try this. Let's do a super wide zigzag on these 6 layers of denim. See how the machine does. And then we'll lay down some other stitching on this denim as well. So we can really say that we put this heavy grade denim to the test. Okay. So a super wide zigzag to start. And then we'll launch into some other stitching. And listen to this machine work. Listen to it work with that 1 amp Brazilian Singer motor being powered through that 1.2 amp foot controller. See if it's struggling or see if it just glides through this super heavy duty sew off. Okay. All right, here we go. You know what? It didn't even seem like it tried. It didn't even try to sew through those 6 layers. It was just like, give us a real challenge, Scott. Give us a real challenge. 6 layers is not a challenge. This used to sew Marine Corps uniforms. Give us a real oorah challenge. Okay, give us an oorah challenge. Oorah, by the way, if all of you are saying, what the heck is he talking about? Oorah is the battle cry for the United States Marine Corps. Oorah is what you would say. In the Army, we would say hooah. So every branch of service has their own battle cry that you would let out if you're in combat and you're getting ready to attack the enemy. It's like almost like in martial arts with a ki. Anyone that's ever studied martial arts knows what I'm talking about. Before you go to break a board, you let out a loud ki, a loud yell to psych yourself up so you can break that board. It's the same thing in the military. If you're fighting the enemy, you let out a loud battle cry before you're going to fight that enemy. Okay? All right, let's pull this out and take a look, see how we did. Take our little clips off. Yeah, we could have used more upper tension on this. Through all of this denim, we could have used more upper tension, or maybe we could have used one of Schmidt's one of Schmidt's denim needles. Maybe that would have done even better. But we'll look at our top stitching. We'll look at our lock stitching. But first of all, I'll lay down a quick blind hem stitch on this as well. A quick blind hem stitch next to it. And we'll go super wide on the blind hem stitch as well, okay? So off camera, I'm just adjusting our stitch selection. Now we're going to lay down a blind hem stitch and we'll see how we do. It launches so smoothly, it's like there's no effort. Like we're not even going through any denim, but we're going through 6 layers of denim. Yeah, same thing on the blind hem. And we're not going to sew it again with the adjustment. I'll just show you what we got. And then you can see straight away what adjustment you would have to make to get the result that we want. So we went through 6 layers of denim with a wide zigzag, a super wide blind hem stitch as well. We got beautiful top stitching. So we know that that brand new bobbin case that I installed when the other one broke because of the crack that was in it is doing its job very nicely here. We get some beautiful, beautiful stitching on the top, especially the joining points of that blind hem stitch, that stretch blind hem stitch. Looks really, really lovely. Look at it like this as well. Yeah, very, very nice. And you can see what we went through right there. That's a lot of material. That's a lot of material. 6 layers of heavy grade denim. And that's why when we got to the back side, we had some issues. We had some issues here where our upper tension wasn't quite strong enough to overcome all those layers of denim. See that little drop point right there across the bottom? The peak and the edges are beautiful on the zigzag. Lovely, lovely stitching. But we needed a little bit more pull to define that stitching across the bottom there, right there. And that's an easy fix. We just bump it up a little bit higher on our upper tension if we're going to be going through that much denim, and it'll tighten that up very nicely. There's our stretch blind hem stitch. And again, you can see we don't have the definition here for the 3 stitches that we should be able to see with greater clarity. How do we get that clarity? We bump up our upper tension probably about another half or another point, and then it'll tighten that up very, very nicely. That's a lot of denim to be going through. And we needed a little bit more upper tension to give us that definition. You can see there, it's starting to poke through a little bit here. Starting to poke through, but it's not quite as clear as we want it. It's not quite as clear as we want it. Tension's a big deal when you're sewing. Tension's a big deal when you're sewing. And as you go through different materials like we are here, making adjustments to the tension is almost a given. It's almost a given. Sometimes it's not going to be on the bottom. Sometimes it's going to be on the top. And if it's on the top of the material, that's where you need to take that upper tension and back it off to give that bobbin case more of a chance to pull down to define that top stitching. Yeah. But considering the thickness of that denim, all those layers of denim, the machine made it look so doggone easy, it's almost embarrassing. It went through those 6 layers of denim like it was nothing. And it gave us an absolutely gorgeous top stitch. And with a little of adjustment on that upper tension, we're going to be able to tighten this up and get a lovely, lovely lock stitch as well. So this machine loves denim. It loves leather. It loves cotton. I wonder if it's going to love a military grade canvas. We're going to give that a try. Military grade canvas right here. This is actually from a shelter half. Actually from a shelter half. And I think we'll probably try going through 2 or 3 layers of this. I'm going to go ahead and cut off this thicker seam edge right here. And then we'll see if we can fold this and get through 3 layers of it. Laying down, maybe we'll lay down a straight stitch on this. I'll cut off that real thick seam over here. And these are using my Guggenheim professional tailoring shears. If you've never tried these, I know a number of you have won a pair of these, but if you've never tried these, they cut through anything. And it seems like they get sharper and sharper as they go, and they have a lifetime warranty. And if you want to try to win a pair of these, remind me, we'll do a contest and you can try to win a pair of these. I know a number of the people in the audience have already won a pair of these. They do an excellent, excellent job. So let's try to go through 3 layers of this military grade canvas. I'm going to fold it over like that, like that. That's going to get us our 3 layers. See if I can get underneath the presser foot. And I'm impressed so far with this auto adjusted presser foot presser. It's doing a very, very good job. It's doing a very good job. And I talked about laying down a straight stitch. Yeah, maybe I'll do that. Maybe I'll lay down a straight stitch on this canvas. We slide it over and then I can lay down a 3-point zigzag next to it. If I can steer it that well, we'll see how well I steer it. I'm going to be kind of feeding it like this and trying to keep it on track as best as I can. So first of all, a straight stitch. I'm adjusting our selector over here from that wide position back to a straight stitch. I'm going to leave my needle position alone. And then I've got to move this all the way over to the left. And I'm not going to go quite as long as I usually go. I'll probably go to about a 4 on stitch length right here. And we'll see if we can lay down a good looking straight stitch through all of this vinyl. Canvas, I'm sorry, canvas, not vinyl. Through all of this military grade canvas. We're trying 3 layers of it. I could try cutting off this extra little tail here and then I could put my little clips on there. Maybe that would help. See if I can do that real quick. See if I can put a couple of those little clips on there to hold it in place. So 3 layers of military grade canvas. This would be like the stuff that's used on shelter halves and tents. Mary's son, when he had field duty with the Marine Corp, they would have been seeing a lot of this. They would have been seeing a lot of that. So we're going to try going through it with a straight stitch, and then we'll follow up laying down a 3-point zigzag after that. Okay, let's see how we do. All right, here we go. Yeah, I did pretty good with that. I sewed straighter than I usually sew. Yeah, and our tension, I'm right around 7 on it right now. Our max is 9. And it looks like we got a pretty good result for the lock stitch out of this as well through all that vinyl. I keep saying vinyl, all that canvas. All right, let me give that a clip. Give that a clip. Looks like I've been running about 1 hour and 48 minutes. We'll wrap up here pretty quick. We only have about 1 sew-off left to do. So these are our 3 layers of military grade canvas. We're going to look at that top stitching first, and then we'll look at that lock stitching, and then we'll see if we can lay down a 3-point zigzag on here as well. So there's our top stitching, which is really, really quite lovely through all of this military grade canvas. There we go. Yeah, very, very nice. Very, very nice. That's what our canvas looks like right there that we just sewed through. That's a lot of canvas, folks. Here's our lock stitching on the back. Yeah, it looks like we maintained some really good stitch tension integrity with that. Maybe just a tweak. But again, we're sewing with a universal needle. And I think we maintained some really, really good stitch integrity considering our setup as well. Look at it like that also. Yeah, some good looking stitching. So 3 layers of military grade canvas. Not even a remote challenge for this Brazilian model 5808C. It just made it look like it was easy as could be. Easy as could be. So I'm going to put on a little bit of interlude music real quick. And I'll be back in a few minutes, so just hang in there. And then we're going to do our final sew off with the same kind of leather that we just went through, but we're going to be sewing in a circle, which is what I like doing. So I'm going to put on some of this Brazilian music, and I've got to step away and do something real quick, and I'll be back in just a bit. Okay. So enjoy and get to know somebody new. If you're in the shadows right now, looks like we have over 2,000 people. Step out of the shadows and say, hey, it's me. Yeah. All right. That's a fun song, but I got to interrupt it. So we're going to do our final sew off now, going through about 5 to 6 ounces of leather. It's the same type of leather that I did the single sew off with earlier in the live stream. And I'll put on some military Marine Corps type music to finish off this final sew off. Now, I would ask the audience, out of the stitches that we have on this machine, straight stitch, 3-point zigzag, zigzag, and blind hem stitch, what would you like me to sew off as far as the stitch on this final sew off on this leather? A straight stitch, a zigzag, a 3-point zigzag, or a blind hem stitch? What would you like to see? Type it in the live chat. Susie, you saying a 3-point? Oh, and also hello to Kathy King. I see Kathy is in the live stream today. It's great to see Kathy in the live stream. I don't think we've seen Kathy for a little while. So it's great to have you here, dear. And I'll just say hello to everybody because we don't have a lot of chatting going on today. A lot of folks watching, but not interacting in the live chat. So I'm going to say hello to Teresa and Jenny. And as far as Jenny, I'll just mention her husband just went through some surgery. So keep him in thought and prayer for healing and recovery and everything like that. And strength to Jenny as she tries to help him through that recovery. So keep Jenny and her husband and family in thought and prayer, if you would. And also, again, hello to Kathy King. Hello to Tim. Great to always have Tim here. Also, hello to In an Asylum, which I think is Aaron Allen out in Vermont. So it's great to have Aaron here. I love that screen name. That's fun. Great to have Aaron from Vermont. And of course, my lovely wife, Susie. And I think I caught everybody. We don't have a lot of chatters today. Well, we do have one, Mere Depth. I don't know who Mere Depth is, but it's great to have Mere Depth here. That's a fun name. Mere Depth. And Awesome Possum. Apparently, Mere Depth likes possums. I like possums too. They do a lot of good in these areas out here. They pick up thousands of ticks a year. And when they're grooming themselves, they kill those ticks. And those are ticks that can't bite you or give you Lyme disease or something like that. The possums take care of them. They do an excellent, excellent job of keeping those nasty critters down in check. So possum power. That's all I'll say. Yeah, possum power. Yeah, I think I said hello to everybody. I believe I did. Yeah. All right, let's do a 3-point zigzag on this final sew off. Looks like I got 2 votes for that, so I'm going to do a 3-point zigzag. So to set myself up for that, I'm going to move myself to the widest setting right here. I'm going to move myself all the way over here. There we go. And I decide how long I want to do it. I'm going to do it fairly short, probably about right around 2. So for this final sew off, I'll put on some Marine Corps music. If you joined us a little bit late, Mary, the owner of this machine, used this machine to help out her son's platoon and sewed hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of Marine Corps nameplates that go on their uniform using this machine back in the day. So it has sewn that. It's done cheer uniforms. It's done cheer repairs. It's done pom-poms. And it's gotten quite a workout. And I'll tell you one thing, when I get those pictures posted on Facebook, you'll see that this machine needed a major spa day, along with all the rust that I found inside of the machine as well. It needed some major help. But she is just sewing silky smooth now, and I'm very, very happy 5808C getting ready to serve this great family from Tennessee for many, many, many years to come. Let me see if I can put on some Marine Corps music to wrap us up in honor of all the Marines that got their nameplates for their uniforms sewn on with this machine back in the day. And a quick Semper Fi to Mary's son and to all the Marines out there. We need our Marines. We need our Army. We need our Navy. We need our Air Force. We need our Coast Guard. We all work as one incredible team to keep this country free, to keep this country safe. All right, so here we end, and thank you to the leaders. Thank you to the moderators for taking such good care of the family. Thank you to all of you in the audience, all 2,282 of you for joining us today on a busy Saturday. We're grateful and honored to have you. And when you're ready, step out of the shadows and join us in the live chat. Join us in the live chat, please. And thank you also for the 961 likes. That's really a big encouragement. I'm glad you enjoy what you're seeing. I'm glad you enjoy being a part of these live streams. We appreciate having you in them as well. So God bless, and let's finish off this final sew off to some good Marine Corps military music. I'm still going. I'm still going. I'm going to sew over my own threads. That's okay. Anchors away. And now finally, Semper Fidelis.
Semper Fi.